Hi, it's Penny here, and this is going to be my TBR for the R Fantasy Bingo Board of 2026. So this is a reading challenge put on by the R Fantasy subreddit on Reddit that they do every year, kind of from the beginning of April through to the end of March. I did this for the first time in 2025 and I quite enjoyed it, so we are going to do it again. So this is the bingo board that we have for 2026. There's 25 prompts. For each one, you can try to do hard mode, but you don't have to. And it's also kind of up to you if you want to just try and get bingo, or I'm going to try for blackout. That's what I did last year. And I think I can do it. Anyway, there's lots of reading prompts to get through, so let's start. The first reading prompt is trans or non-binary protagonist. The story features a trans or non-binary protagonist. The protagonist must not be an alien or a robot. And then hard mode is that it's set in a pre-modern time period, so like more of a historical one. Now, looking at the books that I'm already planning to read, I think my best bet is probably Radiant Star by Anne Leckie. So this is another book that's being released in the Imperial Raj world. And in this series, Anne Leckie does often play with gender, so I'm quite hopeful that there will be a non-binary or trans character in there. The question will be whether they count as human or not, because these are sci-fi futuristic books with a lot of AI and alien characters, and that's kind of like a key theme of the series as well. So it might not fit. My next thought for this prompt was actually Murderbot, which I saw some people talking about as well. That also has the same problem, though. It's debatable whether Murderbot is somewhat human or just a robot. But there is a new Murderbot coming out later in the year as well, so that could be an option. I'm kind of going to wait till those come out to see. I think Murderbot's probably not an option. Oh, I did also want to mention The Raven Tower by Anne Leckie. If you haven't read it, which I unfortunately read it last year, well, not unfortunately, because I loved it. It's a story of a god, well, a god telling his story, but also telling the story of this trans character. And it's set like in a pre-modern society, so it would be perfect for hard mode. But I've already read it. But I definitely recommend it. I did see on Reddit, though, somebody recommending Full Fathom 5, which I happen to have on my bookshelf. This is, again, though, a sci-fi, I'm pretty sure. So it doesn't fit hard mode. And I honestly don't know much about this other than that I found it at a charity book sale. So this is a possibility since it is actually on my physical TBR. Another book that I did see people recommending that I think fits hard mode is The Four Profound Weaves by R.B. Lemberg. I'm not actually sure though. I know I've had this recommended to me, and I also know though that I did try to pick up a book in this series, and I think when I look on Goodreads, none of them are marked want to read, and so then I'm wondering, did I DNF it and never mark it? I feel like maybe I tried the unbalancing, which is like after the Four Profound Weaves, and I found myself kind of lost. So maybe going back to the Four Profound Weaves would be the way to do it. I believe there is a trans man and a trans woman, possibly some kind of romance where they come together after having known each other in the past. Honestly, I could be getting this all wrong, but I've definitely had this recommended to me before, and it's also a pretty short audiobook, so really, it could fit quite well. And actually the other option I have floating around for this is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nevo. So this series supposedly meets hard mode. Something about, actually I won't even attempt a synopsis of that. I don't really know, but I do know that this fits several prompts on the board. So like if I read it, it would give me flexibility for shuffling things around. So I think this year, what I'm really going into this challenge with is the idea of having options and keeping things open. But I think it's this prompt that I'm like the most open with my options. And we'll just kind of see what happens. But I think I'm going to put Radiant Star on the official TBR because I know for sure I'm going to read that book because I'm super hyped for it. Anyway, I think I just spent 5 minutes on that prompt, and if I take that long for everyone, this is like a 4-hour video or something, so let's not do that. The next prompt is judge a book by its title. Read a book based on the title. This can be a title so epic you had to pick it up, or so weird and off-putting that you need to know why it was called this. And hard mode is to dive in without even reading the blurb. I don't have anything for this because anything I saw online that I was interested in, I already knew what it was. What I think I'm going to do is go to the library and just try and find something. That's my plan for this one at this point. It's quite hard because I have so many books that I'm interested in reading, but I already know too much about those, so they don't count. And also, I feel like I don't know what kind of title would even fit for this in terms of a title that's so epic that I just want to read it. I don't know. We'll see. Then the next prompt is translated. So a story that has been translated from a language you don't read or speak. And hard mode is that it's been translated into your language within the last 5 years. The thing that first came to my mind for this was the Vida Nostra trilogy by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko, because they're the Ukrainians, and that series was written in Russian and then just translated to English. And the last book in the trilogy was only just translated like last year. But the thing is, I read it last year because I was so excited about it. I think as I was reading these prompts, I kept thinking first of books that I read last year rather than books that I'm planning to read. So that's quite frustrating. But anyway, if you haven't read the Vida Nostra trilogy, it's like a dark academia, really weird, kind of abstract kind of story. I really love it. I definitely recommend it. But what I did find is Prompt, also by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko, and it was published online in 2024. So that's within the last 5 years, so it counts for hard mode. And I am actually in the mood for some more Marina and Sergei Dyachenko. So this is going to be what I read. And I don't actually know anything about it, but I just am kind of happy to go into it that way. If only the title was better, we could have used it for the other prompt because I don't know anything about it. But Prompt is not a very epic title at all. Then the next prompt is small press or self-published. Read a book published by a small press or self-published. So for this, I went to my go-to small publisher, Huia in New Zealand, who mostly focuses on publishing Maori authors. Unfortunately, I think due to the current political climate in New Zealand, I feel like their later books have been a lot more focused on publishing more historical and political books, and fair enough, but it does mean that's not very helpful for having to read a speculative book, because that's the rule for this board, is that it has to be fantasy, sci-fi, or horror, or some kind of speculative work. I found in their backlist kind of one that I'm still interested in reading. It's called Naviro by Gina Cole. And I'm hoping it'll be a little bit similar to Migration by Steph Matuku, which was also published by Huia. And I think actually, because this is a square that they put on the bingo board every year, or at least it was on here last year. And Migration was the one I read for this, I think. And I love Migration. This is another one where I think it's kind of like a YA novel, some kind of military academy situation. In this case, in space. And there's also, I expect, some kind of Maori culture influence on the story. So I'm going to pick that for this. But if you want to read Migration, it's a YA dystopian, so you have to be up for a YA dystopian, but it's got that cool Maori culture element. It's also got some interesting time elements. I actually want to convince you to read Migration, if that's something you might read at all, because I really enjoyed it. So we'll see if Naviro is something I enjoy just as much. Then the next prompt is unusual transportation. So the story includes a surprising method of moving from place to place. It's actually quite a long description for this prompt, but I looked on the Reddit board and there was a suggestion that The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez fits this. I already had plans to read that, so that's what we're going to be reading for that one. Oh, but I did want to recommend, if you haven't read The Cursed Princess Club, which is a graphic novel series that I really love, and I've just recently started a reread. So I was reading these prompts at the same time as reading that, and there is a part in that where the main character attempts to, and very briefly, rides a llama to get from place to place. Well, he's meant to be riding the llama, but the llama ends up riding him. So then you could say the unusual transportation is the human, or the prince in question. Anyway, I think that would count, including for hard mode. So any chance I get to convince people to read The Cursed Princess Club, I'm going to take it. It's very cute and wholesome, but also really clever and smart. And I think more people would like it than they realize. But if it looks at all appealing to you, you should give it a go. Okay, so then moving on to the second row. The first prompt is The Afterlife. The story deals with the realm of the dead, and hard mode is that it doesn't depict a good place and bad place dichotomy. I don't have a lot of good options on my TBR. I think the one I'm the most interested in is The Bone Orchard by Sarah Mueller. I think the main character in this is some kind of necromancer. When I went back and looked at the synopsis, it was saying something about her using her own blood to create like other copies of herself, and then they're working together in a brothel. I don't know, but someone at some point told me that was an amazing book, and I have seen it. It's got not great ratings, but I would like to try it. And I don't know if necromancy and the way that it deals with the dead in the story will necessarily fit the prompt, but that's the one I'm the most excited about reading. Looking on the rest of my TBR for this story, another option would be to read Mort by Terry Pratchett, so like one of the death books in the Discworld series. I haven't read any Discworld books yet, but Mort was where I was planning to start. So I could do that, but again, does it fit the prompt? I don't really know until I get into it, so we'll see. I suspect it doesn't fit hard mode though. And then I do also have on my TBR Rose House by Arcady Martin. And this one, again, it's some kind of like skyscraper situation, maybe like my synopses for these are all probably terrible. Maybe like some kind of luxury hotel or accommodation situation, and it's run by AI. But the synopsis also does talk about like some kind of ghost or dead person also inhabiting it. It's a little bit unclear whether that would fit the prompt, but like I guess for this one, I have a few options floating around. We'll see. I do think a definite possibility for this from the books that I've read recently would be the Book of the Order series by New Zealand author Philippa Ballantyne. This is kind of a steampunky historical fantasy novel where like the magic order stops ghosts and spirits from coming through from the other side, but there's a lot of like political and magical corruption going on in the world. I don't think it really has a good bad dichotomy. It's more just like on the other side are some really powerful spirits who really want to fuck things up. And it's kind of like a bit of a paranormal romance in that more steampunky setting. Anyway, if that's the kind of book you like, that's an option. Then the next prompt is Game Changer, so a story that features a game or a competition, and hard mode is that the protagonist bends or breaks the rules. So I've got a few options floating around for this prompt. To be honest, a competition or a game isn't necessarily something I love in fantasy novels. I do have plans to reread Wolf by Wolf by Ryan Groudon, where we have this woman trying to win a motorcycle race so that she can meet Hitler and kill him, because this is an alternate history where Hitler won the war and the Nazis now run the world. So that's a possibility. However, for our fantasy bingo, you're only allowed one reread, I think. And I want to save it for the next prompt, so maybe not. I did also just read The Golden Talk by Julian May, which is kind of like an older fantasy sci-fi story, and in that these alien elves back in the Pliocene era with psychic abilities have this like ritualistic combat with the alien goblins of the world. I love describing this book because it sounds kind of crazy. Anyway, that's like an 80s fantasy sci-fi, so if you're interested in that, that could be cool. But I think I read that one just at the end of March, so it doesn't count. There is also Victorious by V.E. Schwab. So that's going to be the third and final book in the Villainous trilogy, the sequel to Vicious and Vengeful, and I'm excited about it. I don't know if it will fit, but I did notice the synopsis of that has a big spiel about chess and who's going to win the game, but I don't think it's going to be like an actual game. I think it's more of a metaphor, but it's a possibility, and I am planning to read that this year, so if it does fit, that would be nice. And then I guess if none of that fits, I do also have The Games House written down by Claire North, who's an author I've been really loving lately. I don't really know what it's about, but I saw someone saying that it's really good, and I saw somebody else saying that it would fit for this prompt, including maybe hard mode. So that's definitely a possibility as well. What should I put on the official TBR for this? Let's put Victorious, because that's already like what I'm definitely going to read this year. But if when I read it, it doesn't fit, I'll have to do some shuffling. Then the next prompt is vacation spot. So you've got to read a book set in a place where you'd like to visit. And there's no hard mode because you deserve a break, which is nice. But also, I do not read the kind of books where they're set in places that you'd actually want to visit, because I like things to be a little bit dark and twisty, but that is not 100% not where I would want to live. So the only one I could really think about for this is, I think, possibly one of my very few comfort reads, and that is, again, the Cursed Princess Club series. I love this series so much. We have the three pastel princesses who have been betrothed to marry the three plaid princes, but while the older sisters are both kind of conventionally beautiful princesses, Gwendolyn, the third sister, is not. And when the third prince discovers that he's betrothed to her, he complains to his brothers that she's ugly. She overhears that and then stumbles into the forest where she comes across the Cursed Princess Club, which is a bunch of princesses who have curses on them that they haven't been able to cure. And I just love it. I would love to have a holiday at the Cursed Princess Club. Like in the first volume, they have a lovely slumber party, and I just think it would be a really great time. I mean, sure, maybe one of the princesses has lobster claws and another one has like holes instead of eyes. Like plenty of the princesses' curses are not exactly nice things, but as people, I really like them. And so I just think it would be a great time. So that's my vacation spot. And that'll be my reread for this board. Then the next prompt is 5 short stories. Read any 5 speculative short stories, and hard mode is to read an entire anthology or collection with at least 5 stories. So what I'm going to read is Seasons of Glass and Iron by Amal El-Murtar. She is one of the authors in This Is How You Lose the Time War, and also the author of The River Has Roots, which was released, I think, last year. It must have been because it was on my bingo board for last year. I have also read, I think it's 28 Days of Honey by her. Anyway, I really love her writing style. I was kind of hoping we would get something a little bit longer from her, but it does seem like she likes to focus on the shorter things. And I think this is just a collection of short stories that she's released over her career. But I have heard very good things about this collection. I think it just came out in March, so I'm going to pick that up. I do have a backup, and that is River of Bones and Other Stories by Rebecca Roanhorse, which I think has also just been released in March. I could have the date wrong. So this is the same thing, except Rebecca Roanhorse, a collection of her stories that she's written. One of them is supposedly a novella in the Six World series, which is a series she wrote and then kind of abandoned. And I really loved it and have been like hoping and dreaming of more in that world. But I'm not sure because I kind of wanted to hold off until I could do a reread of the original books before I read this novella, just to like get the full enjoyment out of it. And I don't think that's going to happen this year, so I probably won't get to this, but it is another option that I think will be really great if you're interested. Then the next prompt is Older Protagonist. The story features a main character who is at least 50 years old, and hard mode is that they don't have like an extended life, so they're not like a vampire or an elf or something like that. So I'm a little bit annoyed because once again at the end of March I read Daughter of Crows, and that 100% counts for this prompt, and I really loved it. So again, recommend, especially if you like grimdark stories. It's told in 2 timelines, so at one point the main character is much older, but actually, even though I did finish that in April, I think the rule is that you had to have only read 25% of it in the month before, and I think I read like 80% of it in March, so it's no good. Anyway, what I do have on my TBR is The Art of Prophecy by Wesley Chu, and I think maybe this might fit, but I have to read it to be sure. But the idea is in this one that there's this young boy who's been raised as the chosen one, but the way he's been trained is basically set him up for failure, and then they've brought in this older woman to be like his teacher. And I believe she is significantly older, but I don't actually know, like, is she just like in her 40s kind of older? Or is she over 50 kind of older? I'm not sure. I'd have to read it to decide. I saw someone else saying that they thought she counted, so I think maybe she will. If not, once again, I've heard The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nevo would fit for this, so that's a possibility as well. But I think I'll add to the TBR The Art of Prophecy. If it doesn't fit, we'll have to shuffle things. Okay, then we're on to the third row across, and the first prompt is Duology Part 1. Read the first book in a duology. Hard mode is that it's by an author you haven't read before. So I don't actually have many duologies on my TBR this year, and all of them are ones I've read before. So Wolf by Wolf is one example. I think there was another one. Oh, The Monsters of Verity by V. Schwab or Victoria Schwab. That's on my TBR for this year as well. But of course, both of those are rereads, so they don't meet hard mode. And even though I said I'm not really trying for hard mode, I feel like if hard mode's easy, does that make sense? If I consider hard mode to be easy, then I feel like, why would I not try to do it? Anyway, what I found on my TBR is Volatile Memory, which is from the Volatile Memory duology. So I know it's a duology by Seth Haddon. This, I think, was one that Rachel from The Shades of Orange recommended. I've kind of forgotten what it's about, but I think, based on the synopsis that I just read, that it's something that kind of reminded me of Anne McCaffrey's Brain Ships, where the idea is that the ship or the AI of the ship is actually kind of embodied in like a physical human body. So like when people are close to death or actually dead, possibly, they get put in like the brain of a ship. Anyway, that's more what Anne McCaffrey's concept was. But I just think this sounded like maybe it was a similar idea and it sounded interesting. I don't really know what it's about. I'm just terrible at reading like online synopsises. When I read this, I don't really feel like I can grasp what it is, but it sounds like it's going to be exploring AI and like human connections and memory in a really interesting way. And I haven't read anything by Seth Haddon, so that's going to be my one for that prompt. Then the next prompt is one I think they also have every year, which is to read a fantasy book club book. And hard mode is to actually participate in a book club that's happening this year. So I'm going to keep an eye on the R Fantasy Bingo book clubs to see if they ever pick up something that I'm interested in. But last year I failed at that. So instead I looked through like the history of their book club books. And I did see on there Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett, which I was planning to read this year. So that's a possibility for this square. But there is actually another square later that I'm hoping it might work for. So assuming that I use it for another square, I also found on the list Senlin Ascends from, I think the series is called The Tower of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. So this is another series that I wasn't really planning to read this year, but I could pick it up. I feel like I'm being really inconsistent with telling you the synopsis of these books, but like both of those are fairly popular series, so look it up, I guess. Because I don't have time to go into all of these. Then the next prompt is published in 2026. So read a book published in 2026. And hard mode is it's the author's first published novel. So I am just in the progress of reading, and I did start it in April, so it would count. This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me by Alona Andrews. I love Alona Andrews. And so I can definitely complete this. So I'm going to put it on the board and then I will have the square ticked off. But of course, Alona Andrews is one of my favorite authors and they've published quite a lot of books. Like this whole shelf is their books and not even all of their books. So I did have a look to see what else was on my list of anticipated releases for the year. And I saw a couple. One that is probably the one I will go with, and maybe I'll actually put it on the TBR. It's Out of the Ashes by Michael J. Sullivan and Lorien Ellis. So this is a book set in Michael J. Sullivan's world of Elan. It's like a new trilogy, I believe, but I think it's been completely written by Lorien Ellis. So Michael J. Sullivan's name is just on it because it's his world, and I guess they've worked together on it to some degree, but it's Lorien Ellis's first published novel. So I think that would count, and that's supposed to be coming out this year. And by the time it comes out, I'll have read all the books in the world of Elan that I was planning to read. I'm not bothering with the Rhaenyra Chronicles. I might go back to it at some point. But anyway, that's an option. And the only other option I have is The Poet Empress by Shen Tao. So this is their first novel. And when I first heard about this, it's like some kind of magic that's poetry based. It sounded exciting, but then I heard someone else say that it was very romantic-y. Someone who was reading it said that, and I thought, oh, okay, not for me. But then I've seen a lot of other people since then say, no, it's not romantasy at all, that it's actually a lot darker than you would expect. And that makes me interested again. But I still have very mixed opinions about whether this is something I would like. So it's like floating around as a possibility. We'll see. Then the next prompt is Explorers and Rangers. The story features an explorer, so a character who travels to and investigates an unfamiliar region, or a ranger, a wilderness or forest-orientated warrior, frequently specializing in things like stealth, bows, tracking, and other hunting-related things. And hard mode is that they have an animal companion. So I did see someone suggest for this kingdom will not kill me, and I think it's debatable. The main character does have an animal companion, I guess, and they are exploring an unfamiliar area. Well, actually, I don't know. I don't think it fits because basically she's fallen into her favorite book series and having to survive. So it's kind of an unfamiliar region in that she hasn't been there before. However, the reason why she can survive is because she knows the series so well that she does know a lot about it. I think it doesn't fit. Something I did already have on my TBR for the year is Annihilation. So that would work in that we've got these scientists going into Area X to explore it. But I don't believe that there's an animal companion. So I think I'm going to put that as my book on the TBR. But I do also have a couple of other options floating around. Once again, The Empress of Salt and Fortune, but also A Song for You and I by Kay O'Neill is like a middle grade graphic-y. I think it's got a decent amount of words, actually. I could be wrong. But I've seen that supposedly follows like an apprentice ranger and that they have some kind of animal companion. Looking at the cover, I think it might be some kind of Pegasus. Kay O'Neill is a New Zealand author and also, well, author and artist, the creator of the Tea Dragon Society and quite a lot of other really lovely books. So that could be a nice easy book to read for this prompt. I probably would like to pick that up and it would meet hard mode, so we'll try and fit that in. I think probably the hardest thing will be acquiring it. Shall I check the library? It does not appear to be at the library. However, since it's a New Zealand author, maybe I will make a suggestion to the library that they should remedy that. Okay, then the last prompt for this row is Duology Part 2. So read the second book in a duology. And for this square, normally the rule in the bingo board is that you can't have an author twice. But for this one, they're letting you pick the second book in the duology you picked for the other square. But I'm actually planning to pick The Hidden Way by Juliette Marillier. So this is the second book, and I think the series is called the Heartwood Trilogy. No, duology. It's a duology or it wouldn't fit the prompt. And I'm planning to pick this up by audiobook anyway, so it should be fairly easy to fit in there. To be honest, the first book in this duology was not my favorite of Juliette Marillier's. It's kind of targeting, I think, a slightly younger audience than what my preference is. But I think it'll still be pretty good, so that's what we're going to pick for this prompt. Because this is another one of these books that just came out in March, I'm pretty sure. Okay, then moving on to the fourth row. The first prompt is a one-word title, so a book that has a one-word title, and hard mode is that it's not a proper noun, so not a place name or a person name. Looking at my TBR, I found two. One is Ascension by Nicholas Binge. I don't really remember what this is about, but it was on my TBR, so I was obviously excited about reading it at some point. The other option I have, which I did actually get reminded about by Jessica's Library Card, I think her channel was called. She did a bingo TBR video, so I'll link that down below. But she suggested Wool by Hugh Howey, which is the book series that Silo, the TV show Silo, is based on, and I have watched Silo. I really enjoyed it, and I was planning to go and read this series at some point. So this is, I guess, the opportunity to do so. So I think actually we're going to put Wool on the TBR. And I guess I will say, Jessica also mentioned for this prompt Middle Game. If you haven't read Middle Game, this is a great opportunity, but I've already read it and I really love it. Like, I don't recommend the rest of the books in the series, but Middle Game. Middle Game has some amazing alchemy in it, and I loved it. Okay, then the next prompt is a non-human protagonist. So the idea is to read a book with a non-human protagonist. And hard mode is that there's no human POVs in the story. So I think actually what I should put on the TBR for this is Platform Decay, that new Murderbot book that's coming out. But again, it's still definitely debatable when a Murderbot is a human or not. And I think there's also a small chance that that book might have human perspectives in it. So then the other possibility that I have floating around that I'm not 100% sure if it fits or not, but The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Core. This is something about a mermaid, I think, and I'm pretty sure the main character is a mermaid. Although I think they're traveling with a plague doctor, so if you get the perspective of the plague doctor, maybe they're human, possibly. Anyway, that's my possibility. If neither of those end up working for it, I think there's still a good chance that I'll stumble across another non-human perspective in my reading, because I love non-human perspectives. So there's a good chance I'll pick one up just organically. But maybe for now we'll put The Salt Grows Heavy on the TBR, because I just think Murderbot is a little bit too human, just a little bit. Then the next prompt is a middle grade book. Read a middle grade book intended for readers 8 to 12. And hard mode is that the author is entirely new to you. I don't read that much middle grade, but the ones I did have, well, actually the ones I did have on my TBR were debatable whether they're YA or middle grade. I'm pretty sure The Witches by Roald Dahl would count. And I came across a copy of that on the roadside last year, I think. And I honestly, though, don't remember whether I've read the book or not. I've definitely watched the movie and I loved it. So I could read that. It's a possibility, but I don't know if I've read it, so I'm not sure. I did also have A Cattle Witch by Nydia Okorafor on the list, but I've also seen it listed as YA, so I think maybe not. I have to be honest, in New Zealand, we don't really have a middle grade concept. So I have to remind myself to focus on the age range rather than the concept of middle grade. But anyway, I think what I've decided I'm going to do for this prompt, I guess we'll put The Witches on it for now, but I think what I'm going to do is go to the library and just go to the children's part of the library and see what I can find. So then the next prompt is First Contact, a story that prominently features interspecies or interracial meeting for the first time, and hard mode is that it is non-violent first contact. So again, I looked at the books that are already on my TBR, and what I want to try is The Invader's Plan by L. Ron Hubbard. So L. Ron Hubbard, creator of Scientology, not great, but I'm really interested to read his science fiction, and I came across this quite a while ago in a little free library, and I've been wanting to read it. It is quite a thick one, so I've been putting it off, but I have wanted to do it this year. And I think the way the story works is that the rule for these aliens is that when they go to Earth, if they get seen, they're meant to just kill people. I think maybe not just Earth, like if they go to any foreign planet and they get caught, they should just destroy them. But the kind of inciting incident is that these guys go to Earth and they get seen and they don't kill everyone or don't kill all the observers, and that kind of sets things in motion where they have to like properly communicate. I don't really know. There might be violence in this one, but that's what I'm going to try. I also have on my TBR Alien Earth by Megan Lindholm, which is the pen name of Robin Hobb. I know nothing about that, but it looks like it could be First Contact. Both of those I wanted to read. Invader's Plan I was already planning to get to this year. Alien Earth is something I would like to read soon just because I love Robin Hobb, Megan Lindholm. So I'm going to put Invader's Plan on the TBR, but I have a backup plan, and if neither of those work, I guess I'll find something else. Then lastly for this row, we have Murder Mystery. The main plot of the story focuses on solving a murder, and hard mode is the main character is not a detective or private investigator. So I feel like I've forgotten the plot of Foundry Side, but part of me is saying that I feel like there's the chance that we're solving a murder. I don't know. I'm going to put that on my TBR, but it might be a stretch. If that doesn't work out, I feel like I'm sure to stumble across some kind of murder mystery thing at some point. Again, talking about books that I read last year, The Raven Scholar is a really good option for this that I read and loved last year. And unfortunately can't read this year. Although, if we get the second book for that, I might reread it. But I bet the second book won't fit the prompt. Anyway, moving on to the final row. Firstly, we have Cat Squasher. Read a book over 500 pages in length. An omnibus book doesn't count for this. And hard mode is that it has to be over 900 pages. I just don't have any books over 900 pages on my TBR, so I don't think I'm going to get to hard mode. I am currently reading Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff, and that's over 500 pages, so that would be a win for this. I do see I have some other options on my list in front of me, so I guess if I wanted, for whatever reason, to shuffle Empire of the Vampire to somewhere else, because there is a possibility. In fact, I just thought of a terrible argument to use Empire of the Vampire for the next prompt. So I do also have on my TBR Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and that's 600 pages, so that's a possibility for that square too, but for now we'll leave Empire of the Vampire there. The next prompt is Feast Your Eyes on This. Food or a meal is a significant part of the story's plot, and hard mode is to attempt making a dish from the story yourself. So if I was going to argue Empire of the Vampire fitting for this, I would be arguing that blood is a meal. And look, for a vampire, it is. So do you think it could count? Because that's a possibility, because I'm planning to read that whole trilogy. But I can only use one book from the trilogy anyway because of the rules. Anyway, that's a possibility, because I don't have very good options for this. The only thing I could think of where food is like a significant part of the plot, and maybe I'll stumble across something else, but the only thing I could think of was the Elemental Assassins series by Jennifer Estep, because this follows a woman named Jim Blanco who during the day is a barbecue restaurant owner, and then at night is an assassin in this like magical kind of paranormal world with vampires and magic, elemental magic, obviously. And the main character also, like quite often throughout the books, will like not only cook at her restaurant, but if they're at home and they're like planning some kind of assassination thing, she'll make a comfort meal for people, and there's quite a lot of details about the food she makes. However, I've read that whole series, so the only thing I haven't read is a couple of the novellas, but I think the only one that I thought had any chance of fitting is Winter's Web. However, in that one, it does seem like they go to like a Renaissance fair, and I just don't know if there'll be food involved. So I'm going to put that on the TBR for now, but it's not great. Once again, though, I will suggest to you Cursed Princess Club. In the first book, kind of the reason why Gwendolyn overhears the prince saying that she's ugly is because she's trying to make these special waffles for her brother who has been poisoned by a witch, and he's like a food critic, and it's also like a key part of the plot that when he tastes food, he tastes the emotions of the people that are eating it. And also an excuse to make the like crazy waffle construction that Gwendolyn makes for him. I mean, it could be good. Then the next prompt is published in the 70s. Read a book that was first published anytime between 1970 and 1979. And hard mode is that it's written by a woman. So I looked on my TBR, and what I have is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. I have forgotten the synopsis of this, but it comes highly recommended, and I have loved some Le Guin stuff before, so that's going to be my option for this prompt. I'm just wondering if I have anything else on my shelves that fits the bill, but I feel like I've got a lot of 80s and 90s books, but not any 70s that I can think of. Anyway, then the next prompt is Politics and Court Intrigue. Politics are central to the story's plot. This covers everything from royalty, elections, and wars to smaller local politics. And hard mode is there's a prominent focus on politics at a city level or lower. For this, what I have is Where the Axe is Buried by Ray Naylor. But I don't think that this meets hard mode. It's definitely political. It says a thrilling near-future world of geopolitical espionage, a cybernetic novel of political intrigue. The story of a near-impossible revolutionary operation with a blistering indictment? Is that how you say that word? I think I've never said that before. A blistering indictment of many forms of authoritarianism that suffocate human freedom. So that was on my TBR already, not necessarily for this year, but we'll put it on the list. I do also wonder, now that I'm thinking about it, whether Foundry Side would work for this, but I already have that somewhere else. But you know, if I end up shuffling things around. And it definitely is possible that some of my other books that I'm going to read this year will fit the prompt. I just don't really know until I get into them. So we'll see. This is definitely one I might shuffle things around with. And then the last prompt is author of color, story written by a person of color, and hard mode is the author does not live in the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. This is the only case where I've been a little bit sad that New Zealand is included, because usually my kind of go-to for any author of color prompts is to try and find like a Maori authored book, but it won't work. Well, I can squish one in there, I guess, if I don't read anything to meet hard mode. So I think what I will do for this is challenge myself to read The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu. I actually gave it an attempt a while back after my friend told me that it like completely changed his perspective on everything. And of course, lots of people really love this. But at the time, I had too much work stress and I just couldn't comprehend it. So I want to challenge myself to give it another go. So we're going to put it on this bingo board to like motivate myself. Because honestly, I looked up a lot of books by authors of color that I was interested in reading, and so many of them live in America. I guess that's a problem with following a lot of American booktubers and just kind of, I guess, that quite concerning influence that America has on the rest of the world. But Cixin Liu lives in China, so that's good. And I'm definitely sure there are plenty of others. I just got sick of Googling where authors live, so this is the first one I found, and I think it's a challenge I want to take. Okay, so that is my 2026 Fantasy Bingo Board TBR. It's a bit of a mess, to be honest, but I do have pretty much a plan for every square. I just need to go to the library and try and find a book with a cool title and maybe a middle grade book, but I do expect that there'll be a bunch of shuffling around as we go through the year. Let me know if you're planning to do a fantasy bingo this year and whether you're going to try for blackout or maybe just bingo to keep it easier. Like, I think it's nice to have a challenge, but it's definitely also nice to have an achievable challenge. And that's why I've kind of not pushed myself too hard with hard mode this year. And also let me know, of course, if you've got any recommendations for the squares that I'm kind of iffy on. Let's chat down in the comments. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.